Folks, thanks so much for tuning in again today, and a special thanks to the comment section and also to people who called in. A couple days ago, there was some difficulties apparently with the noise production, and I thank the observers for that. I think we've corrected it. As you can see, those of you who are watching and not just listening, you'll see I'm not in my regular studio doing some traveling and a number of speaking engagements, and so it's a little bit interesting what you might see in the background and hear in the background. We're trying to keep it right up to par for you. Well, let's jump right into it. Stay tuned because we'll talk about everything from the Ayatollah's son maybe being gay right to AI now developing the ability to smell things. Okay, let's jump right into it. Yes, reports have come out, and it's not just apparently attempts to get propaganda against the Ayatollah and the son of the Ayatollah, but his son, the Ayatollah's son, the Ayatollah, of course, got nuked and sent to hell to spend time there with Hitler. And what we've got here is his son, first name Mojavi, his friends call him Mo. He has been, it's rumored now, coming out with reports of he had a long-term gay relationship with a tutor that he had when he was young and growing up with, and also with a family member. And apparently there are reports that while he is lying in hospital, still recovering from wounds after being almost also blown into eternity, he has made some aggressive sexual moves against the doctors. Now, these are unconfirmed, but it's three different separate reports, so that could get very interesting if this continues, because in Iran, of course, they hang people who are gay, they hang people who are LGBTQ, they kill women for the slightest infractions, and those are the people of Iran that it seems like all of Europe and Canada wants to protect from this nasty attack they're under right now. So another casualty, if we'll call it, Ismail Khatib. This is the guy who is head of the global terror network. He sets up the sleeper cells all around the world, and is a major planner when it comes to the death and destruction of not just Jews but Christians and basically anybody who doesn't agree with the regime. So he just got nuked and blown away, and he also has joined the Ayatollah in hell with Hitler. So another high-level casualty there. Oil price, we keep hearing, of course it's gone up, but those who are frantic about the war on Iran try and keep things at a real level of anxiety and talk about the surging price of oil, Look at the figures, just follow the facts. Oil did jump as high 2 weeks ago to 119 a barrel. That's the price of Brent. It's down now at around $93, dropping again as more countries are coming online and opening up their reserves. Price of oil, in fact, is dropping. Say a word of prayer for the Iranian women's soccer team. You know, they were at the World Cup event in Australia, and they boldly and bravely did not sing their national anthem when it was played. 5 women defected, and now the 5 women have decided to return. We know what happened. They were told very clearly that their families, their children, their loved ones, their relatives would be tortured to death if they dared to defect. And so those 5 women have returned. There's 2 who have stayed in Australia. They've just arrived back in Iran, and I say quite sincerely, pray for these brave women because there is just no limit to what this disgusting, demented, and I'm going to say demonic regime will do to protesters. So keep those folks in your prayers. Russia has now declared and made it clear that, in fact, they have been sending satellite imagery to Iran. They've also been sending them drone technology. And again, and I know I harp on this, but I'm going to say it again, if we had opened up, Canada, the government, Liberal government, stupidly restricting the development of our best refined oil and gas products in the world, and the province of Quebec not allowing a pipeline to go across Quebec to take our beautiful liquid natural gas to Europe. And so Europe, of course, is still dependent on Russia from oil. So here we have the Europeans, in fact, funding Russia as Russia not just continues to kill Ukrainians, but ships their technology to Iran to help Iran continue their death march on anybody who opposes them. So, wake up, Canada, and let's have policies that help not only Canadians and economies and jobs, but people around the world while lowering emissions. We can do it all. Well, David McGuinty, who's our Minister of Defense, has just announced that Yes, it looks like they will be allowing Chinese electric vehicles. These are military vehicles, Chinese EVs, onto military bases in Canada. Minister Melanie Joly has also repeated that she doesn't see a problem with Chinese technology on our army bases. This is a horrific policy because we know that China can embed the necessary devices into this equipment. We're allowing them right onto our military bases. Is it serious? Look, years ago when I was on the board of TELUS, we were under pressure and we eventually, or they eventually at TELUS, got rid of, shut down much of their technology, which was great technology that was being brought in by Huawei, that company. And I actually went to China. I met with the owner and the CEO of Huawei. We talked about these things. And Canadian telecoms wouldn't even allow Chinese product because they know they can get embedded technology from China. And here we have our Minister of Defense and two top ministers saying, hey, no problem bringing in Chinese EVs onto our military bases. That will clearly shut down our ability to have open and full communications with the U.S. on vital intelligence information. So if you like that, if you like Chinese listening in on our Canadian Air Force's bases, just keep voting for the Liberals and you'll see that happen. Well, very interesting to see the French foreign minister declaring that Canada should become part of the EU. Canada should become part of the European Union. Look, we have a lot in common with the European Union. One thing, thankfully, we don't have with many of the countries there are their ridiculous rates of hyper-regulation, their policies of hyper-immigration. Many of those countries now at a case where they are losing elections because of significant radical Islamist vote. And so here we have the EU saying we should become one of them. And no reaction from Canadian media, no reaction from Canadian politicians. But we all lost our minds, went completely crazy when Donald Trump said we should become part of the US. So very interesting developments there. I'm hoping to hear an apology from the EU for thinking that they could just sort of absorb Canada. But let's see if that will happen. Well, we have another fascinating situation where the Emergency Act, if you recall, this was the act that the Liberal government brought in to shut down the trucker convoy. It had never been used before in history. It was the first time ever. It was meant for extreme wartime conditions, but they brought it in, and it wasn't just shutting down truckers, but also, as you know, it led to bank accounts being invaded by the federal government, all kinds of liberties that were trashed in the interest of safety. And that was taken some time ago, of course, after the shutdown was over and the Army had moved in and arrested truckers and done everything else. That did go to court, a number of lawyers representing the truckers, and the lower courts said that the use of the Emergency Act by the Liberals was in fact excessive and it was not constitutional. Of course, the federal government was not happy to hear that, so they took it to the Federal Court of Appeal. Federal Court of Appeal, as you know, looked at it and they said the use of the Emergency Act by the federal Liberals was a clear invasion of the rights and the liberties of Canadians. And so they ruled that it was wrongly done. The federal Liberals still not happy. They've now taken it to the Supreme Court. They want to keep that power to trash our constitutional rights. They want to keep that. They're desperately holding on to it. Well, as we've seen today in Venezuela, and again, Venezuela being somewhat liberated after the U.S. did that remarkable, let's just call it apprehension of the narco president of Venezuela, and he's still awaiting trial in the U.S. The new president, her name is Delcy Rodriguez, has declared today in Venezuela to be a day of joy. It's a national holiday because the Venezuelan baseball team beat the U.S. Baseball team in a World Cup baseball contest. So fantastic time for them. And of course, Donald Trump not missing out on any opportunity, said, hey, we should be offering statehood to Venezuela and make them the 51st state. So it looks like he's given up on Canada being the 51st state and saying to the people of Venezuela who have much newfound freedom, maybe they should join the U.S. Always fascinating to see the president leaping in on these type of items. Well, we have a judge in Canada. The judge's name is Nahid Bardai, and he's been ruling on the case of immigration fraud, a case against Mr. Gurpreet Singh. And this case has been thoroughly investigated under investigation and before the courts for a while. And the judge and the perpetrator himself and the lawyers of the perpetrator have all admitted and said, yes, this was extreme fraud, widespread immigration fraud, getting people into the country illegally. Everybody's admitted, and the judge has dismissed the case on technicality. So again, and to add to that, the person who admitted he was guilty, he was admitted in court he was doing the fraud. The lawyers admitted, his own lawyers admitted he was doing the fraud. Case has been dismissed, and now, of course, he is suing the government. And so we Canadian taxpayers will continue to pay for this ridiculous mess. If you like that, if you like this type of approach, just keep voting accordingly. We have a fascinating situation in British Columbia where a trustee of the Chilliwack School Board, his name is Laurie Thronis. This gentleman was an MLA for a while, and then he moved to school board. I know Mr. Thronis, he's a solid individual, and he has quit the Chilliwack School Board because he's protesting the gender equity program that was forced on British Columbia's back in 2016 and is still there. The whole situation with not protecting girls in washrooms, with allowing gender transformations to go ahead on kids without parents knowing, the whole SOGI program, gender imposition, I call it. He has opposed that, and so some people were saying to him, well, why did you quit? You want to oppose it and you want to raise issues and concerns. He says he has quit, but he'll continue the fight because another former school board trustee, Barry Neufeld, who raised issues while he was a school board trustee, has now been assessed a $750,000 fine for speaking up against the gender program and gender transformation program. And Mr. Thronis has said he's still going to speak up against this. He's going to be a bold voice, but he can't run the risk of a $750,000 fine if he does that while he's being a school board trustee. So let's see where that goes, but it does show the effect of these tribunals, which do not have to go through regular court processes. They do not have to have rules of evidence. They do not have to even declare who the witnesses are. Mr. Neufeld will be, of course, he's ruined financially with this ruling. And Mr. Thronis now wants to avoid that, and so he stepped aside. Bill de Blasio, the former mayor of New York, remember he was one of the first to cave into the Black Lives Matter movement. And of course, all lives do matter. Nobody contends with that, but the Black Lives Matter movement, very strong in imposing what are really severe left-leaning policies on a variety of governments. And it was Bill de Blasio who caved to that. And he really started in the U.S. among mayors the whole thing about defund the police. Defund the police because the police can't be trusted. Of course, that saw a huge increase in crime right across New York, crime that continues to this day. And in an interview just yesterday, Bill de Blasio says that was a mistake. He never should have promoted the defund the police. We need the police. He actually had good words for the police. So very interesting. When you don't have to get reelected, you seem to be a lot more common sense. When you're trying to get reelected, you cave into some of these extremist groups. Well, there's a positive development in AI. And this is very interesting. AI, of course, we know has the ability to think, has the ability to reason. AI can generate videos. AI can duplicate your voice or my voice perfectly, can do stunning things. And now it has the ability to smell, has the ability to identify fragrances and aromas. People say, well, what's going to happen with that? Well, there's all kinds of application, but the first one is they're actually using it now for the detection of cancer, where they can take cancer tissue, cancer samples and expose it to AI. So AI will analyze it not only as it would under a microscope, but it can smell it. Where'd they get that from? Well, you may have heard some of the stories in the past about certain dogs trained to be able to sniff, again, from cancer products, or skin tissue that has been taken and is in a laboratory situation. And very interesting development there. We'll see where all of that goes. Amazon, in terms of, boy, you talk about impulse buying. Amazon now announcing just today and yesterday, they are now making available at hundreds of sites across the U.S., some in Canada, a promise of 1 hour delivery. You order the product, you're going to get it in 1 hour, and they've identified 2,000 locations where you will get that product within 3 hours. Talk about impulse buying. Now, Shopify, which is a huge shopping network, also taking a step. They've announced that because of AI, when you make a purchase on Shopify, if you agree, they can quickly do a credit analysis of you, and Shopify themselves, in like 1.5 seconds, can extend credit to you, just as if it was a credit card, but it's not a credit card. It's a Shopify AI capability that allows you to buy something. They, in fact, become your banker. They become your credit card. And so not only can you get the product within an hour, you can Shopify and buy it also, and you can get credit even if you don't have the money in the bank. In some cases, not every. Last year, Shopify made $258 million just on credit fees. The stock market in Canada or in the U.S., they have a commission that governs them with rules and regulations. And famously, of course, for 100 years, any company that's registered on the stock market has to do quarterly reports. A pretty dramatic change now with the Securities Commission announcing that the companies no longer have to do quarterly reports. They can do semi-annual. I'm going to pause on that. That's actually not a bad idea. I've been involved in having to produce quarterly reports as a Minister of Finance, and also sitting on a number of boards involved with companies. It is a good process. It's a necessary process to be scrutinized, but the producing of quarterly reports every quarter, it's hugely expensive, requires all kinds of employees who may have nothing to do with the actual business to churn out those reports. And now they're saying you only have to do it every 6 months. That's going to be a money saver. With AI, you can still analyze your spending and possible irregular spending within a company. You can still do that instantly. So interesting to see that shift of over 100 years in process. Well, another shift that's interesting on the political front, it appears, at least in the polls, that in the upcoming Senate elections in California, they're coming up in November, for the first time in over 2 decades, Republicans have a shot. As a matter of fact, Republican candidates are in the lead. There's 2 possible candidates, and either one of them, when they are polled, show that they could win that Republican or the senatorial, gubernatorial, the governorship in California. Gavin Newsom, of course, is the out-of-control governor of California, the Democrat. His taxes and regulations, of course, sending business fleeing out of California. Interesting to see if that holds and if the Republicans pick up a governorship this November on that. Gen Z, in terms of more reports that come out, it's fascinating to watch, and I'm sure some of you, if you're listening and you are Gen Z, or if you have kids or grandkids who are, much more, we grew up using the phrase career ladder. And Gen Z, it's much more career web. They are creating a web of opportunities. What we're seeing is an increasing trend towards, because they are, so many of them, brilliant when it comes to technology. They're not having to go to university to get those skills, becoming extremely skillful. But until they get their full-time positions that really pay incredibly well, they're doing other jobs, part-time jobs. And so developing a web, and in fact, getting a job now for Gen Z is not to get a long-term career positions, but it's to get noticed, is to get spotted. Some positive developments there. And again, the head of some of the largest, head of Meta, for instance, saying, look, if we have an employee who shows up on time and works hard, they're going to have a job for as long as they want. So Gen Z moving there. Another, on the Gen Z side, there's reports coming out that are Gen Z really abandoning the social media? Are they throwing away their iPhones? Not quite, not exactly, but they are downgrading. There's a real trend because they're recognizing the negative effects of being on social media all the time. And so there's more of a trend to, we see, for instance, just using their flip phones on weekends. not even carrying their iPhones around. Huge trend into turning off notifications. I'll tell you what, if you want a stress reliever, I've done that. I get so many emails a day, and those of you who, business-wise, and who want to keep in touch with me, I do check those emails, but I'm not checking them every 5 seconds. I'm listening to some of my Gen Z grandkids who are following that and starting to shut off notifications. And it's important that it's happening because 2 reports just released this week, one out of the American Medical Association of Pediatrics, one out of Denmark, showing this very significant trend over the last 2 decades of increased anxiety, especially among Gen Z, and even more so among girls and among boys, and the anxiety. And it was specifically, this report looked at the whole area of how Gen Z is dealing with increased anxiety, and looking at the aspect of cutting, where they actually, to deflect from the anxiety, literally cutting themselves. Of course, this is a severe problem and winds up sometimes in life-threatening, if not life-ending situations. And very important work going on there. There's even suggesting some of the rush for Gen Zs as soon as they are old enough to get tattoos. It's almost a reflection on this thing of cutting, self-harm, the pain, to take away from the anxiety. And just on that note, we should keep in mind, helpful to keep in mind, and I was just looking at another study that was done 2,900 years ago. And it was done by a statesman, a head of a king, as a matter of fact. And he said he dealt with his anxiety by actually taking his anxiety, believe it or not, to God in prayer. And he actually wrote about that. He says, "I am weary, but I am not giving up." Something to keep in mind. Have a great day.